That afternoon, the first meeting about the station redevelopment took place across the street, inside an old maintenance office, now turned temporary HQ. Noah Hale sat at the end of the long table, flipping through the briefing packet. The paper smelled faintly of toner and impatience. A woman in a sharp suit was speaking. Ms. Klein, city liaison. Voice like cold glass. The Union Grove redevelopment plan is designed to modernize this district, she said. We'll preserve historical elements where possible, but the station's structure is beyond repair. Noah looked up. You mean you're demolishing it? She smiled tightly. We prefer the term replacement. He tapped his pen once against the table. You're aware there's still a business operating on the ground floor. An unregistered coffee shop, yes. We'll handle relocation. Noah's jaw tensed. Handle, he repeated. She didn't notice his tone. Demolition is scheduled for late March. You'll have your blueprints finalized by the end of the month. He nodded slowly, but his hand had stopped moving. Under the table, his thumb brushed a folded piece of paper he'd kept for years. A sketch he'd drawn long ago. The one with the cafe window and the woman laughing behind it. At the bottom corner, in his own handwriting, were the words, "The calf between trains." After the meeting, he stepped outside. Snow was falling again, heavier this time. The world seemed quieter for it. He crossed the street to the station. The smell of coffee hit him before he even opened the door. That same warm note of cinnamon and time dot. Lena looked up when he entered. No surprise this time, no softness either. Just calm, controlled. You're back, she said simply. I wanted to talk about tearing down my livelihood. He exhaled. About saving what I can. From what? Progress? He winced at the edge in her tone. Lena, I didn't know you still worked here. If I had, you'd have stayed away, she asked. I don't know. Yeah, she said. Me neither. He walked closer, eyes moving over the cafe again. You kept the same curtains, he murmured. They keep the drafts out. Still play that old radio. Still doesn't get half the stations. He smiled faintly. God, it's like stepping back in time. Funny, she said. Feels more like standing still. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Everything they hadn't said hanging between the steam and the silence. Then, Noah pulled something from his coat, a folded page, yellowed at the edges. He placed it on the counter. What's this? She asked. Something I drew. Here, years ago. She unfolded it. A sketch of the station, the tracks, and a small cafe with her handwriting on the sign. The calf between trains. Her breath caught. You still have this? He nodded. Some things don't move, even when they should. Lena looked down at the drawing, her fingers brushing the paper. Outside, a train passed, slow, loud, leaving behind a ripple of air that shook the window panes. For a moment, it felt like the world was giving her a choice. Hold on, or look up, she whispered, not quite to him. Maybe some things aren't meant to move at all. By the time the city lights faded from the horizon, Union Grove Station was alive, against barely. Trains came less often now, but the night carried its own rhythm, the soft hum of vending machines, the sigh of metal, the shuffle of boots across old tile. Lena worked quietly behind the counter, the hiss of the espresso machine her steady companion. Outside, snow fell like static, and she could almost pretend it was just another night. Almost. Then the door opened, and the quiet, cracked Noah stepped in, carrying a roll of blueprints and the smell of cold air. Evening, he said. She didn't look up. You know we close at 11. It's 10:45, he said, checking the clock. Plenty of time. She gave a dry laugh. You always did like to cut it close. He set the blueprints on the counter and unrolled them carefully. I need to take a few measurements tonight. I didn't want to disturb the morning crowd. What crowd? She said, glancing at the empty booths. The ghosts from platform 3. He smiled. Then I'm in good company. He began setting up near the window, pencil tucked behind his ear, precision tools clinking softly on the wood. The light caught the side of his face, older now, more defined, but still carrying that quiet concentration that used to both calm and unnerve her. Lena poured herself a coffee. She didn't ask if he wanted one, but she poured him a cup anyway. Some habits, like gravity, were too old to argue with. When she slid it across the counter, he caught her eye and said, "Still knows exactly how I take it. You're predictable. Or maybe you remember." She looked away. Don't read too much into caffeine. For the next hour, the only sounds were scribbles of graphite and the low hum of the heater. He moved through the room slowly, like a man reading an old map he once drew himself. Occasionally he'd measure the width of a beam, or trace a line along the floor. Lena leaned on the counter, watching him despite herself. It wasn't nostalgia, not exactly. It was something quieter, harder to name. He looked out of place here, in his pressed coat and clean shoes. But the way he touched the walls, gentle, almost reverent, made him seem less an intruder and more a pilgrim. "Find what you're looking for?" she asked finally. "Not yet," he said. "I'm trying to figure out where it went wrong." She raised an eyebrow. "The station or us?" He looked up, and for once didn't dodge. "Both, maybe." Her chest tightened. "You're not supposed to say things like that." "Sorry," he said softly. "Guess I forgot the rules. You wrote them. I was younger then, and stupid." He smiled, a little sad. "Still am." A train horn echoed from somewhere beyond the snow, long and low. The vibration trembled through the floorboards. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "You really think this place can be saved?" He hesitated. "Not the way the city wants it to be, but maybe in pieces. Memory has a blueprint too, you know." She stared at him. "You sound like an architect who lost his religion." "Maybe I found it again," he said. Here, the air between them thickened, not tense, but alive. The kind of silence that asked to be filled but didn't demand it. Later, when the last train of the night rumbled through, he started packing up. Lena stood at the window, watching the snow swallow the tracks. He joined her there, holding the rolled blueprints under one arm. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to imagine this place as something else." She gave a half smile. "You always wanted to change everything." "Not everything," he said. "Just the things I was afraid to lose." She turned to him, the lamplight painting gold across her face. "Fear's a lousy reason to build anything." He nodded slowly. "That's why I'm back." Her breath caught in her throat, but she didn't ask what he meant. She didn't need to. The station groaned softly as the wind pressed against the doors, like the building itself was listening. When he finally left, the snow had stopped. Lena watched from the window as he crossed the empty platform, his footsteps leaving clean impressions that would disappear by morning. The snow had fallen in thin, patient layers, the kind that didn't announce winter so much as surrender to it. Union Grove Station sat at the edge of the city like a forgotten word, half asleep, half alive. The trains still ran, but slower now. Fewer passengers, fewer reasons to stop. Lena Hartman wiped a film of frost from the cafe window with the side of her wrist, watching the evening train roll in. The headlights cut through the snow like tired eyes. Steam hissed, brakes groaned, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For the 5 minutes it took to unload and reload the same handful of people. Her cafe, the steam line, smelled of coffee, cinnamon, and metal. The counter gleamed in the soft yellow of the overhead bulbs, and a small bell above the door chimed every time someone walked in, a sound she loved. Even if most nights it didn't ring much. A clock above the espresso machine ticked toward 10:47 p.m. Another hour, maybe 2, and she'd close up. Her son Milo was upstairs in the tiny apartment that doubled as their home. He'd fallen asleep to the rhythm of trains years ago, and now couldn't sleep without it. The door creaked open. Cold air slid in before the man did. He was tall, wrapped in a dark coat dusted white, the kind of posture that came from boardrooms and airports. He shook off the snow, looked around as if the place were half memory, half dream. "Coffee?" she asked automatically, reaching for a clean mug. He smiled faintly. Always the same question. Lena froze, her hand hovering over the cup. She knew that voice. Even after 8 years, even after silence that thick, she knew. "Noah," he nodded once. "Hey, Lena." The world tilted just slightly, the hiss of milk frother, the hum of the old refrigerator, the muted announcements overhead. Everything went muffled. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice steadier than she felt. "Work," he said. "I'm consulting for the city on the redevelopment project." She blinked. "You mean this station?" He hesitated, then nodded again. "Yeah, this one." The words hung between them, heavier than snow. Redevelopment. She'd read the articles, seen the sketches of sleek glass and steel. Union Grove was on the list of stations to be written. She'd laughed when she saw it because who would reimagine ghosts? Apparently, Noah would. He looked around. The cafe, the mismatched chairs, the chalkboard menu still written in her looping hand. The little Christmas lights she never took down. "It hasn't changed," he said softly. "It's not supposed to," she replied. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Same old Lena, and you," she said, wiping the counter. "Still fixing things that aren't broken." He looked away. Sometimes the old ones can't hold anymore. Then maybe the builders should have made them better the first time. For a moment, their eyes met, and the years between them collapsed into something unspoken, something that neither blueprint nor apology could fix. The train outside gave a long, low whistle. Snow swirled past the window in slow spirals, catching the orange light of the platform lamps. Lena poured him coffee without asking again. The gesture was muscle memory, unthinking, familiar. He wrapped his hands around the cup. "Still too hot," he murmured. "You still drink it too soon." They both smiled this time. A fragile, tired, human thing. Milo's voice drifted faintly from upstairs. "Mum." She looked up. "Yeah, baby. Did the last train leave yet?" "Almost," she called back. Noah's eyes softened. "He's how old now?" 7, she said, then added after a pause, "He likes trains." Noah nodded, something flickering behind his expression. "Of course he does." The loudspeaker crackled. "Final call, 10:52 northbound, parting in 2 minutes." Noah stood, setting down the cup. "I should go, early meeting tomorrow." She nodded. "Sure. Good luck with your redevelopment." He studied her face for a moment longer, as if searching for something he'd lost here years ago. Lena, he said quietly, I didn't know this was still yours. It always was, she said, just not yours to fix. He almost smiled again, but didn't. The bell above the door chimed once more as he stepped out. Vanishing into the blur of snow and light, the train pulled away, its sound fading into the distance. Lena stood at the window, watching until the last car disappeared. Then she turned off the lights, leaving only one lamp burning behind the counter. Steam still curled from the cup he'd left unfinished, and in the reflection of the window she could see her own face older, steadier, but still waiting for something she didn't have a name for. Morning light came late to Union Grove. It always did, slipping in slow and silver between the cracks of the old station roof, touching dust and steel and the faint shine of forgotten mornings. Lena unlocked the cafe door at Ludantssischerwolfen, her breath blooming white in the cold. The platform was empty except for a stray newspaper curling at the edges, and the echo of a train that had already passed. She flicked on the lights, one by one. The hum of the espresso machine filled the silence. Familiar as heartbeat, there was still a half-full cup on the counter. She hadn't thrown it out. She told herself it was just because she'd been tired. The bell jingled. Morning, Miss Lena. It was Pete, the station custodian, white hair under a faded Cubs cap, jacket zipped to the neck. He'd been working here longer than anyone could remember. Morning, Pete, she said. Cold one, huh? Colder than my ex-wife's stare, he said with a grin. Heard you had a visitor last night. Her hands stilled around the coffee pot. Word travels fast. In this station, you know it does. He leaned on the counter, lowering his voice. Was it him? She sighed. You make it sound like a ghost story. Could be, he said. He's the one with the clipboard now. City folks say they're tearing this whole place down. Rebuilding. Lena set the pot down a little too hard. Yeah, I heard. Pete looked at her closely. You okay? Sure, she said, forcing a smile. We survived worse. He chuckled. That we did. But sometimes, kiddo, surviving ain't the same as keeping. After he left, Lena stood behind the counter, staring at the steam rising from the kettle. She didn't like the word rebuilding. It always came dressed in hope, but it usually meant erasing. She walked to the window, looking at the tracks. The snow from last night had turned crusty and grey. A paper cup tumbled along the platform in the wind, hitting the bench where she and Noah once sat, talking about the view nobody cared about. She turned away quickly. Upstairs, Milo was awake, hair a wild halo, eyes still heavy with sleep. He sat cross-legged at the table, colouring something. Morning, Bug, she said, setting toast in front of him. What are you drawing today? He held it up proudly. A train, of course. But this one was different. It wasn't moving. It was parked in front of a little building with a crooked sign that read, The Calf Between Trains. Lena blinked. That's new, he shrugged. I just made it up. A train that doesn't have to leave. People get on, drink hot chocolate, and stay until they want to go somewhere. She smiled faintly. Sounds nice. Yeah, he said. Nobody's in a hurry there. He smirked. Guess I'm evolving. She didn't answer, but the corner of her mouth twitched. He found the candles and lit 3. The soft yellow glow warmed the space, flickering across the chalkboard menu and the faded photos of old trains that lined the wall. Lena poured another pot of coffee. Noah leaned on the counter, watching her. You still do that thing, he said. What thing? Tap the pot twice before pouring. She blinked, surprised. You remember that? I remember a lot of things. She poured, pretending not to hear the way her heartbeat changed at those words. They sat together at one of the tables, the storm whispering against the glass. Milo had fallen asleep in a booth, pencil still in hand, his head on a pile of napkins covered in train sketches. Lena pulled a blanket over him, her hand brushing his hair tenderly. Noah watched her quietly. He didn't say what he was thinking, that she looked exactly the same as the woman he'd left behind, only stronger, steadier, more whole. "You've done good, Lena," he said softly. She turned. "What?" "With him, with this, with all of it." She shrugged. "You learn to build what doesn't fall apart." He nodded. "You always could." For a long while, the only sound was the wind. Then Lena asked, without looking up, "Why'd you really come back, Noah?" He hesitated. "The city called me. That's not what I mean." He looked at her, really looked. "Because I couldn't stand the idea of someone else erasing what we built." She laughed once, quietly, bitter. "We built chaos." "Maybe," he said, "but even chaos can be beautiful." She met his gaze. "You left, remember?" "I know," he said. "And every train since then's been leaving in the wrong direction." She didn't answer. She couldn't. The storm beat harder against the walls. The whole building seemed to shiver. Then darkness, the power cut, the hum of the heater died, the clock light blinked out, and the silence deepened until even breathing felt loud. "Great," Lena muttered. "Just perfect," Noah chuckled. "At least we have candles." She lit another one, setting it on the counter. "You ever notice how you show up right before everything breaks?" He smiled through the dim. "Maybe I'm here to help fix it." She gave him a look. "That's not your specialty." He leaned back, eyes soft in the glow. "Maybe I'm learning." Minutes passed like hours. Outside, snow pressed against the windows, thick and relentless. Inside, the candlelight flickered over the small details. The chipped cup, the clock frozen at 2:15, the petition papers half written beside the coffee stains. Noah's voice broke the quiet. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" She froze. "Don't. Why not?" "Because it doesn't change anything." He nodded slowly. "Maybe not, but it makes the truth less heavy." "What truth?" He looked at her, voiced low. "That leaving was the worst mistake I ever made." Her throat tightened. "You don't get to say that now." "I know," he said, "but I needed you to hear it. You think one night in a snowstorm fixes 8 years." "No," he said, "but maybe it reminds us what's still broken." Lena stood, turning away, hands gripping the counter. "Don't do this, Noah." He rose to, staying a careful distance. "Do what?" "Make me feel sorry for you." He shook his head. "I'm not asking for that." "Then what do you want?" He hesitated. A chance to stay. The wind wailed outside like something alive. The candle between them trembled, flame bending under invisible breath. She turned to face him, eyes shining in the half-dark. "You're good at building exits. Don't pretend you want roots." "Maybe I didn't before," he said, "but I do now." "Why?" He exhaled. "Because there's nowhere else I've ever wanted to miss." The words hung there, fragile, impossible, real. And for once, she didn't move, didn't speak, didn't run. She just looked at him, and for the first time in years, didn't know how to hate him. Outside, the snow kept falling, endless, soft, unhurried. Inside, 2 people stood in the glow of a candle. The whole world stopped between one heartbeat and the next, and for the first time, neither of them minded being stranded. The world woke up white. The storm had emptied itself during the night, and now the station stood under a thick quilt of snow, muffling every sound except the distant drip of melting ice. Lena blinked against the light filtering through the window. The power was still out, but sunlight had replaced candles. The clock on the wall had stopped at 2:15, its hands frozen mid-beat. Milo was curled up in the booth, blanket wrapped around him, a pencil still in his small hand. Noah sat by the window, watching the sun rise through frosted glass. He hadn't slept. She poured him coffee on instinct, though the air was still cold enough for their breath to show. He looked up, smiled faintly. "You always did know how to make mornings better. Don't push your luck," she said. But there was no edge in her voice. The station outside looked unreal. Tracks buried, benches half disappeared, everything painted in white and gold. Steam rose from the cup between them. For a while, they just sat in silence, the kind that didn't need apology. Then Noah said, "It's strange. Storms always feel endless until they're over. And then it's like they were never here." She nodded slowly. "That's how people remember pain too." He looked at her. "I don't want to forget." Lena met his eyes. "You already did once." He didn't argue, just took a slow sip of coffee, the heat curling around his hands. By mid-morning, the radio crackled to life. A voice filled the cafe. "All lines between Union Grove and the city are now cleared for service. First train departing 11:30 a.m. Milo stirred awake, blinking. "The trains are back." "Looks like it," Lena said softly. He grinned, climbing onto the booth seat to look out. "Everything's shiny. Snow does that," Noah said. "Makes the world look new." "Can we go outside?" Milo asked. Lena hesitated. "It's cold. I can wear your scarf," he said, already halfway to the coat rack. She laughed. "Fine, but stay where I can see you." When he was gone, Noah said quietly, "He's got your stubbornness." "And your timing," she replied. "Always shows up in the middle of a storm." That made him smile, small but true. "I didn't know he stopped himself." She looked at him, her tone softening. "You don't get to finish that sentence." "I know," he said, "but I wish I could." Outside, Milo stomped footprints into the snow, leaving tiny trails like train tracks across the platform. His laughter carried through the glass, a sound so pure it made the building itself feel younger. Lena leaned against the counter, watching him. Noah stood beside her, eyes following the same small figure. "He's happy," Noah said. "Yeah," she whispered. "He doesn't know what's coming." He turned to her. "You could tell him the truth. About me." She met his gaze. "And what would that do? You might not even stay." "I could. You've said that before. This time's different." "Why?" "Because I'm not leaving to chase something. I'm trying to stay for something." Lena's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "You can't rebuild what you walked away from, Noah. You can only start over." "Then let me start," he said. Here, she wanted to say no, to end it cleanly, before hope turned into another wound. But she didn't. She just exhaled, long and quiet. The sound of the 11:30 whistle broke through the silence, faint but clear. A train rolled into the platform, metal glinting under the morning sun. They both turned toward it, as if the universe had staged the moment just for them. Milo came running in, cheeks red, scarf hanging loose. "Mum." Mr. Hale, look. The train's moving again. Yeah, sweetheart, she said. It is. Can we ride it? Not today. Why not? She smiled, brushing snow from his hair. Because some people aren't ready to leave yet. Milo looked between them, then at Noah. Are you leaving? The question hit like a quiet thunderclap. Noah crouched down to his height. Not today, he said. Not if your mum lets me help fix the cafe first. Milo grinned. You can fix things. Sometimes, Noah said. Not everything, but some. Then you can help me fix my trains. Noah smiled, glancing up at Lena. Sounds like a deal. The radio hummed again, faint music filling the air. Old jazz, half static, half memory. Lena leaned against the counter, arms folded, trying not to smile. You realize he's going to think you're some kind of superhero now. I'll try not to disappoint him. You will, she said. But he forgives easily. Noah looked at her, voice low. Do you? She didn't answer. But for the first time, she didn't say no outside. The train pulled away slowly, disappearing into the distance. Milo waved at it until the last car vanished behind the curve. Noah stood by the window, his reflection beside hers in the glass. For a long time, they just stood there, the cafe warm behind them, the snow melting, and the tracks gleaming in the light. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. On the counter lay one of his sketches. He'd forgotten it, or maybe left it on purpose. It showed the cafe exactly as it was now, only brighter. In the margin, in his small, neat handwriting, were 3 words: keep the light. She stared at it for a long time, the paper trembling slightly between her fingers. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer under the register. The heater hummed back to life, and somewhere upstairs, Milo turned over in his sleep. Lena whispered into the quiet, maybe I will. The notice came on a Tuesday. It wasn't dramatic. No men in suits. No flashing lights. Just a folded paper tucked under the cafe door, stamped with the city's seal. Lena almost missed it, thinking it was another delivery invoice, until she saw the words printed in bold. Notice of demolition and redevelopment. Union Grove, Estato, and her fingers went numb. She read it twice, then a third time, the words blurring as the steam from her coffee drifted past her face. By the time Noah walked in that evening, she'd taped the notice to the front of the espresso machine. So you don't have to break it to me gently, she said. He stopped short, eyes scanning the page. You got this already. Apparently bureaucracy moves faster than trains. He took a breath, jaw tightening. Lena, I didn't know they'd send it this soon. She shrugged. Of course you didn't. I'm serious. The city accelerated the schedule without notifying the consultants. So you're a consultant now? Her voice was light, but her eyes weren't. Must be nice. You can build or break, depending on what pays more. That's not fair, he said. Fair? She repeated. This place raised my kid, Noah. It's the only roof I could afford after everything. He lowered his voice. After me. She flinched like he'd hit her. Don't do that, she whispered. Don't make it about us when you're standing here with blueprints for my eviction. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful this time. It hummed with all the things they'd left unsaid for years, things that had no place among coffee beans and ticket stubs. Noah rubbed the back of his neck. I'm going to fight this. She laughed, short and bitter. You Fight your own contract. If I have to, then what happens to you? He met her eyes. I'll figure it out. She turned away. You always say that. Later that night, she found Milo at the back table, sketching again, pencil moving fast over paper. He'd drawn the cafe, the station, and a train passing by. But this time, the train wasn't moving away. It was stopped, doors open, with tiny stick figures inside, one tall, one small, one sitting at the counter. What's this one called? She asked softly. He grinned. The train that waited. Lena swallowed the lump in her throat. That's not how trains work, sweetheart. Maybe this one's different. When she closed up that night, the wind was strong, sweeping snow across the empty tracks. She stood on the platform for a long moment, watching the dark horizon, the blinking signal lights that looked almost like heartbeat monitors in the distance. She remembered the first time Noah had brought her here, before Milo, before the cafe, before everything fell apart. It had been summer then, golden and loud, and she'd said she wanted to build a place that felt like a pause between destinations. He'd smiled and said, then build it. She had, and now the same man was here to tear it down. The next morning, she found him already waiting inside, blueprint tube under his arm, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept. Couldn't stay away, she asked. Couldn't stop thinking. About what? The demolition schedule. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a folded letter from his coat pocket. It's a petition draft. I can submit it to the council. We can argue historical preservation. She stared at him. You're serious? I'm not letting them erase this place, he said. Not while I still have a voice in it. You think that'll change their minds? He nodded. I think it's worth trying. She hesitated. Then, quietly, you always were good at fighting lost causes. Maybe I learned it from you. For the first time that week, she let herself smile, small, tired, but real. All right, she said. Let's fight then. They spent the next hour at the counter, drafting, editing, scribbling notes. The cafe smelled like ink and espresso. Their elbows brushed, sometimes, and neither of them moved away. At one point, he said, you know, you were the first person who ever believed I could build something that mattered. She looked at him sideways. And you still think you need blueprints for that? He smiled faintly. Old habits. Well, she said, this time you're building from the heart. No measurements for that. He stared at her then, not like he was remembering, but like he was seeing her again. It was almost too much. Outside, the 9:15 train roared past, shaking the windows. They both looked up, watching as the lights streaked by in a blur of motion and snow. And when the sound faded, Lena said quietly, trains don't wait, Noah. I know, he said. But maybe people can. She exhaled. Don't make promises you can't keep. He didn't. He just looked at her. That same impossible mixture of regret and hope, and said, I'll be here tomorrow. And for the first time, she didn't tell him not to come. By the time the storm hit, it was already too late to go anywhere. The forecast had called it a mild snow system moving east from Lake Michigan. They got that wrong. By midnight, Union Grove Station was buried, the tracks white and vanishing, the platform lights glowing like drowned stars. Inside, the Steamline Café flickered with warmth, its windows fogged over, its door refusing to open against the wind. The clock above the counter read 1:57 a.m. Lena stood behind the counter, arms crossed, staring at the radio that kept repeating the same announcement. Trains northbound and southbound from Union Grove are temporarily suspended until further notice. Her son Milo sat at a corner table, doodling on napkins with a pencil stub, completely unfazed. Snowstorms were magic to him, adventures wrapped in white. Noah sat a few feet away, coat still on, cup of black coffee cooling, untouched. He'd stopped by earlier to drop off the revised petition papers and got stuck when the first drifts buried the doors. They hadn't said much since Milo looked up from his drawing. "Mum, the train's really stopped." "Yup," Lena said. "They'll start again when the track's clear." He grinned. "So we're stuck together." Lena smiled faintly. "Looks that way." Noah looked over, amusement in his eyes. "Sounds like he's taking it better than we are." She shot him a glance. "He doesn't have rent due or demolition notices on his door." Milo frowned. "What's demolition?" "Something we're not talking about right now," she said quickly. Noah hid a smile behind his cup. Lena noticed anyway. The wind howled outside, rattling the glass. Inside, the cafe felt suspended, between time, between places, between choices. Noah stood, rubbing his hands together. "You got any candles?" "In case the power cuts." "In the drawer," Lena said. "Why? You planning to play hero?" "Just being practical. That's new." Spring came slowly that year, hesitant, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. The snow turned to rain, the trains came and went again, and the people of Union Grove slipped back into their quiet rhythm. But inside the steamline, time felt different. It didn't move in schedules or departures anymore. It moved in glances, in half-finished sentences, in the sound of Noah's pencil scratching blue lines over yellowed paper. He'd started coming by almost every evening now. At first, it was under the excuse of measurements, then permit follow-ups, and eventually no excuse at all. He would sit at the same corner table, blueprints spread out, coffee beside him, while Lena worked behind the counter. They didn't talk much. They didn't have to. Some silences are made of trust. Then one afternoon, the rhythm broke. Lena came downstairs from her apartment to find a man in a city jacket, stapling a notice to the wall beside the ticket booth. She froze. "What is that?" The man didn't even look up. "Official order. Station's due for closure next month." Her voice hardened. "You can't just, ma'am. I just post what they give me." When he left, she ripped the paper down and read it, bold, official. "Merciless. Final redevelopment. Notice Union Grove. Station to be vacated by April 30th. All tenants and personnel are required to cease operations by the stated date. Demolition scheduled for May 2nd. Her hands shook. The letters blurred. It was happening. And this time there was no petition, no meeting, no blueprint that could stop it. When Noah arrived that evening, she didn't greet him. She simply handed him the notice. He read it, and the color drained from his face. "They moved it up," he whispered. "No kidding, they weren't supposed to." She cut him off. "Stop saying that. Stop pretending this is just paperwork gone wrong. It's you, Noah. It's your company. Your name's on those damn blueprints." He set the paper down carefully, as if it might break. "I've been fighting it. Then fight harder. I am not hard enough." He looked up, his voice cracking. "You think I haven't tried? I've burned every bridge I had in that boardroom. They don't care about a small-town cafe or a single mum trying to survive. Then why are you still working for them? He hesitated. Because if I leave, there's no one left on the inside to slow them down. She laughed bitterly. So you stay loyal to the people tearing my life apart. I'm trying to protect you. No, she said, eyes sharp. You're trying to feel better about leaving me twice. The words hit like glass. He flinched, the truth finding its way under his skin. Lena, don't, she said softly. Don't you dare make promises in my cafe when you'll walk back into their office tomorrow. He swallowed hard. This place matters to me, then prove it. Her voice cracked, not from anger, but exhaustion. Because I can't fight both of us, Noah. I can't. That night, after he left, she sat alone in the dark cafe, the notice still on the counter. Rain tapped against the glass, steady and soft. She picked up a pencil, the same one Milo used to draw trains, and began sketching over the demolition date. She drew the cafe as it was, the clock, the counter, the lamp that flickered, the table where Noah always sat. Then she wrote 3 words underneath, still standing here. She pressed the pencil so hard it snapped. Upstairs. Milo woke to the sound of thunder. He padded down the stairs, rubbing his eyes. Mum, she looked up, trying to smile. Hey, bug. Couldn't sleep. He shook his head. It's loud. She pulled him close, wrapping him in her arms. It's just rain. It can't hurt you. He glanced at the counter, the papers, the coffee cups, still warm. Are we leaving? The question caught her off guard. What? I heard you and Mr. Hale, he said quietly. Are they taking the cafe? Her throat tightened. We'll figure something out. He nodded, too wise for his age. Can Mr. Hale help? She hesitated. He's trying. Then let him, Milo said simply. She stared at him, surprised. Why? Because he looks at you the way I look at trains, he said sleepily. Like he wants to stay, but he doesn't know how. Later, when he was asleep again, she stood by the window, watching the rain blur the world outside. The reflection of the cafe lights shimmered in the glass. And for a fleeting moment, she saw it, the life that might still exist here. Between departures, she whispered to the empty room. If you're going to fight for this, Noah, don't do it halfway. Noah didn't go home that night. He walked the city instead, from the old district, across the river, down to the loop where the buildings turned into glass and silence. By dawn, he was standing in front of Hale and Associates, his company's name still shining gold above the door. He'd spent half his life building the empire behind those letters, and for the first time, it didn't feel like an achievement. It felt like a weight. Inside. The morning smelled of new coffee and recycled air. His assistant looked startled when he walked in before 7. Mr. Hale, you have to cancel everything, he said, without slowing. Board meeting now. By 8 a.m., the top-floor conference room was full. Men in suits, papers rustling, the skyline glinting cold behind them. He stood at the head of the table. No presentation, no folder. Just the demolition notice Lena had handed him. I'm withdrawing from the Union Grove project, he said. Murmurs spread instantly. That's a multi-million contract, someone said. You can't, I can, Noah said. And I am. Connors, the senior partner, leaned forward. You're letting sentiment dictate corporate decisions. Maybe, Noah said. But maybe the whole point of building is to care where you build. You're throwing away your career over a train station and a coffee shop. Connors snapped. Noah smiled faintly. No, I'm keeping it because of them. By the time he left the office, the clouds had broken. He didn't know if he still had a job, and for once, he didn't care. All he knew was that he needed to get back to the station before the city sent its trucks. Lena, meanwhile, had already started packing. Boxes lined the counter, marked kitchen, supplies, books. Milo sat on the floor, drawing on the cardboard a train running across the boxes, connecting them all together. "Mum," he said, "if we move, can we take the smell?" She paused. "What smell?" He sniffed the air. "The coffee and the trains and you." She smiled weakly. "We'll try." But inside, the truth burned. Some things don't move. They vanish where they belong. She didn't hear Noah come in until the bell chimed. When she turned, he was standing in the doorway, coat damp from rain, eyes tired, but bright with something she hadn't seen before, certainty. "You're early," she said, folding a towel into a box. "I quit." Her hands froze. "What?" "I quit the firm." "The project?" "All of it." She laughed softly. "You're lying." "I'm not," he said. "I told them I'm done letting a city decide what stays and what falls. If they want to fire me, they can." Lena just stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because I meant what I said. This place matters. You matter." Her throat tightened. "You think that fixes this?" "No," he said gently. "But it's a start." The silence that followed wasn't angry this time. It was the kind that comes when two people finally run out of lies. She walked to the window, the light slanting across her face. "You shouldn't have done that for me." "I didn't," he said. "I did it for who I was when I met you." She turned back to him. "And who's that?" "A man who believed things could last." Milo tugged at Lena's sleeve. "Mum," she crouched down. "Yeah, bug." He held out a crumpled envelope. "This came from the mail slot." She took it, frowning. The envelope was unmarked, only a return address. City Development Office. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet. Her eyes scanned the lines once, twice, then again. It wasn't a notice. It was an approval. Petition for historical preservation of Union Grove Station and Café accepted. Redevelopment permit suspended pending review. Her hand shook. "Noah," he blinked. "What?" She looked up, tears welling. "They stopped it, at least for now." He exhaled sharply, almost laughing. "That's impossible." She shook her head. "You did this." He smiled, small, breathless. Maybe someone on the board still remembers what a heart looks like. Milo clapped his hands. "Does that mean we stay?" Lena pulled him close, kissing his hair. "Yeah, sweetheart, we stay." Noah stepped closer, voice low. "Looks like we bought some time." She looked up at him, eyes shining through tears. "You gave me back my home." He shook his head. "You built it." "I just finally noticed." That night, when the station went quiet again, Lena sat by the window. The trains rumbled softly in the distance, steady as breath. Across the counter, the boxes sat unopened. She didn't unpack them yet. She just left them there, a reminder that maybe, for the first time, staying wasn't the same as being stuck outside. Noah locked the station door, then paused to look back through the glass. She caught his eye. Neither of them waved. They just held each other's gaze. The faint smile that said everything words couldn't. The clock above the counter ticked again, somehow. Impossibly, it had started moving. For the first time in months, Lena slept through the night. When she woke, sunlight spilled across the wooden floorboards, catching on the half-open boxes. The air smelled of fresh coffee and rain, a new morning pretending nothing had ever been threatened. But the notice board on the wall still hung there, empty now, like a scar. Downstairs, the cafe buzzed with a quiet energy she hadn't felt since before everything began. Regulars filled the tables again. Construction workers, teachers, a couple of sleepy commuters, and for once, laughter didn't sound out of place. Milo had taken charge of the pastries, proudly serving chocolate croissants to anyone who asked. 2 for $5, he said, serious as a businessman. Lena smiled. You're going to run me out of business, kid. He grinned. I learned from the best. Then the bell chimed, and Noah stepped in. He wasn't wearing his usual neat coat or work shirt, just an old sweater. Sleeves pushed up, like he used to wear when they were younger. He looked free in a way she hadn't seen before. Morning, he said softly. Morning, she answered, pretending to busy herself with the espresso machine. Coffee. Always. He sat at his corner table, watching the light hit the window. For a few minutes, neither said anything. It was enough just to be in the same place, the silence finally kind. Then she noticed the envelope in his hand. What's that? He hesitated, then slid it across the counter. My resignation papers. They went through. Her breath caught. So it's official. He nodded. Yeah, I'm no longer Mr. Hale, partner of Hale and Associates. Just Noah again. She poured his coffee slowly. You okay with that? He smiled faintly. Ask me after I find out who that is. She nodded. I think he's someone who drinks his coffee too hot and still tips too much. Sounds familiar. They both laughed, soft and almost shy. Then his tone shifted. Lena, I'm leaving town for a while. Her hands froze on the counter. What? I've got a few offers. Smaller firms out west, places that actually listen. I need to start clean, somewhere I'm not the guy trying to fix the past. She tried to smile, but it felt wrong. So that's it? No, he said quickly. This isn't running away. It's giving you space. The cafe is yours now. No shadows attached. She swallowed hard. And what about? He looked down. If I stay, I'll start building around you again, instead of with you. You don't deserve that. The words were kind. They still hurt when he left that afternoon. He didn't say goodbye. He just pressed his hand to the window glass, a silent promise. Then the train came loud, low, final, and he was gone. Days turned into weeks. Lena ran the cafe alone again, but it wasn't the same kind of loneliness anymore. She'd walk by his table and still wipe it down like he'd been there that morning. Sometimes she'd find his old pencil wedged behind the register, the wood-stained blue from graphite. She never moved it. Milo would ask every few days, when's Mr. Hale coming back? And every time, Lena would answer the same way. When the train's ready, one evening, she stayed open later than usual. The station was quiet. The last train long gone. She sat by the window, watching the tracks disappear into the dark. Then, faintly, the sound of a guitar came from the platform outside. She frowned. No one played music here, not since the buskers left years ago. She stepped out, arms wrapped in her sweater. And there, sitting on the edge of the bench, was a young man strumming softly, voice low. He smiled when he saw her. You're Lena, right? Yes, she said cautiously. Do I know you? He shook his head. No, ma'am. But a guy named Noah Hale told me to stop here. Said you might let me play a set. She blinked. He sent you. The man nodded. Said this station deserved a song. Lena looked around the tracks, the old lights, the sign faded from years of wind, and something inside her loosened. She nodded. Yeah, I think he's right. That night, music filled the station for the first time in decades. Strangers paused to listen. A few danced. A few cried. And when the last note faded, Lena realized she wasn't waiting anymore. She was living again. Later, when she locked up, she found something tucked beneath the register. An envelope. Her name on it, written in his handwriting. Inside was a small sketch, the cafe just as it was, and under it, 5 words, I'll take the next train. She traced the letters with her thumb, smiling through tears. The clock on the wall ticked once, soft and steady. Outside, the tracks hummed faintly, as if answering. Spring didn't arrive all at once that year. It crept in slow, a shy visitor tiptoeing through the cold. The snow on the tracks melted in small silver streaks, and the first buds began to push through the cracks in the platform concrete at the steam line. The mornings grew brighter, busier, louder. Commuters brought back the hum of routine. Travelers lingered longer. And Lena found herself laughing more than she realized. Sometimes she'd glance at the corner table and half expect to see him there, pen in hand. Head tilted the way he did when he was lost in thought. He wasn't, but his cup was still on the shelf, a simple ceramic one. Hairline crack near the rim. She kept it there on purpose. Not as a monument, but as a reminder. Some things don't have to be finished to be whole. One morning, a postcard arrived. No return address, just a sketch of a wide blue sky over a desert plain. The handwriting on the back was unmistakable. Still building, still learning, still thinking of the station that taught me how to stop. Lena read it 3 times before tucking it into the drawer beneath the counter. She didn't cry. She just exhaled a long, soft breath that sounded like peace. Milo was at the door, backpack slung over one shoulder, waiting for his school bus. Can I take the long way today? He asked. The long way. Through the platform. I like hearing the trains. She smiled. Go ahead, but don't be late. He grinned, kissed her cheek, and ran off the sound of his sneakers, slapping against the wood, echoing like a heartbeat, when he disappeared down the platform. Lena leaned against the doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching the station breathe. The world, somehow, had become enough. That afternoon, a man from the city office stopped by. You're Ms. Carter? He asked. Yes, she said, wary. He handed her an envelope. Official notice. The station's now registered as a protected site. No demolition, ever. She stared at him. You're serious? Completely. Congratulations. After he left, she stood in the middle of the cafe, surrounded by the hum of the espresso machine, the chatter of regulars, the clink of cups, and she laughed. It wasn't disbelief. It was relief, a joy so simple it hurt. She turned to the window, whispering, You did it, Noah. That evening, the sunset painted the station in amber and gold. The guitarist came again, this time with a small crowd. They played until the last light fell away, the music spilling through the air like warmth. When the final note faded, Lena stood at the counter, hand resting on Noah's old mug. A familiar voice broke through the noise. Still keeping my seat warm. Her heart stopped. She turned, and there he was. Older, maybe, with sunburnt skin and a new calm in his eyes, but still him. Noah, he smiled. Heard the train sound different in spring. I thought you weren't coming back. I took the next one. She laughed, soft and shaky. You got my postcard? I did, he said. It's why I came home. Milo burst in from the back, eyes wide. Mr. Hale. Noah crouched down, smiling. Hey, champ. You've grown, so have you, Milo said solemnly, and everyone laughed. Noah looked up at Lena again. You kept the place alive. She shrugged. You kept me brave. He stepped closer. May I sit? She nodded toward his table. Always. Later, after closing, they sat together on the platform bench, the night train humming in the distance. The stars blinked above them, faint and scattered, like memories refusing to fade. You know, she said, when you left, I thought the sound of trains would always make me sad, and now it sounds like someone coming home. He smiled. Maybe it always was. They sat in silence, the station breathing around them with iron, air, and time. For once, nothing needed to move. The last train passed, the whistle fading into the horizon, leaving behind only the stillness of two people who finally stopped running. A year later, the sign above the door read, "The calf between trains, hand-painted." A little uneven, letters outlined by Milo himself. Spring had come again, brighter this time, full of color, of noise, of life. The old station was no longer the town's forgotten edge. It was its heart. Tourists stopped to take photos of the clock that still ticked 5 minutes slow. Kids from the local school painted the benches with blues and greens. Someone even built a small flower stand by the tracks, and Lena, for the first time in a long while, wasn't afraid to look forward. Morning light poured through the windows as she wiped down the counter. Milo sat by the door doing homework, tapping his pencil against his lip. "Mom," he said without looking up, "can I go to the art fair this weekend? Mr. Hale's showing his new designs." She smiled. "Mr. Hale-who?" "I thought he was just Noah." Milo grinned. "He said I should use the formal name. Says it makes him sound important." She laughed. "He doesn't need help with that." The bell chimed, and the man himself walked in, arms full of rolled blueprints and a box of pastries. "Morning," he said, breathless. The bridge team loved the muffins last time. They begged for more. "You're bribing city workers with baked goods now," Lena teased. "It's called community engagement," he said with mock seriousness. "And it's very effective." He set the box down, and for a moment, their hands brushed, not by accident, not by hesitation, but with the ease of people who had already chosen each other. Milo looked up. "Can we hang the new drawing today?" "Which one?" Noah asked. "The one with the clock tower and the cafe." Noah smiled. "You picked my favorite." The drawing went up behind the counter. It wasn't perfect. The lines wavered, the ink smudged, but it captured the station as it was that first winter. The snow, the lamplight. The woman behind the counter looking out at a man she wasn't sure she'd ever see again. Lena traced the lines with her eyes, then turned to Noah. "You kept this." "I keep all of them," he said quietly. "They remind me how things begin." At noon, the first spring train arrived. The platform filled with noise, luggage wheels, laughter, announcements muffled by wind. Lena stood at the doorway, watching people come and go, faces changing, stories passing through. This place, her place, had become a threshold. Not a stopover, not an ending, but a pause. A place between destinations where people remembered who they were. And she realized that's what she'd become too. Not someone waiting for a train, but someone building a home for those still on their way. That night, after closing, Noah stayed to help mop the floor. When they finished, the cafe smelled of soap and cinnamon, the lights low and warm. "Do you ever miss the city?" she asked. He leaned against the counter. "Sometimes, but I don't miss who I was there." She nodded. "You've changed, so have you." He reached out, gently brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You stopped waiting." She smiled. "You stopped leaving." They stood there, quiet, the world outside humming with the sound of the tracks. Then, faintly, a train horn echoed in the distance, low, soft, steady. Lena turned her head toward the sound. "There it is," Noah smiled. "The 11:45? Yeah," he looked at her. "You know, for years, I thought love was about catching the right train. And now I think it's about building a place worth missing it for." She didn't say anything. She just stepped forward and rested her head against his shoulder. The cafe lights flickered once, as if agreeing, and then steadied again. Outside, the tracks shone under the moonlight, stretching far into the night, endless, alive, waiting. And for the first time, Lena didn't wonder where they went, because she already knew where she was meant to stay. The day of the anniversary came with rain soft. Silver, forgiving rain. Lena woke before dawn, listening to it drum against the window pane. The station outside shimmered under the lamplight, and even through the glass, she could smell the wet earth, the hint of coffee grounds, the faint scent of spring dots. She smiled. A year ago, this same sound had meant loss. Now, it sounded like a promise. By noon, the calf between trains was glowing. Paper lanterns hung from the beams. Photos lined the walls, snapshots of travelers, locals, musicians, children who'd grown taller since last summer. The cafe wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever paused here and left a piece of themselves behind. Milo was in charge of the guest book, solemnly instructing everyone to write something real. He wore his best shirt and an apron 2 sizes too big. When Lena tried to help, he waved her away. "I got this, Mom. You just..." "Host," she laughed. "Since when did you become the boss?" He grinned. Since the cafe started needing one. By 3 o'clock, the room was full. The hum of voices mixed with the hiss of milk steam and the low strum of a guitar, the same musician Noah had sent that first night. He winked at Lena mid-song, nodding toward the door. She turned and froze. Noah was standing there, rain in his hair, coat unbuttoned, holding a wrapped canvas under one arm. He looked like someone who had traveled far just to get back in time. She couldn't help but smile. "You're late," he shrugged, breathless. The train waited. He crossed the room, setting the canvas gently on the counter. "Happy anniversary, Lena." She brushed a raindrop off his cheek. "You brought me a painting." "Sort of," he said, unwrapping it. "It's a map." She blinked. It wasn't just a painting. It was the station and the cafe, rendered in exquisite watercolor, every tiny detail alive. But around it, in place of streets and lines, were small sketches, moments from the past year. Milo serving coffee, the guitarist on the platform, the first snowfall, the sign reading the calf between trains. At the center, Two figures by the window, one laughing, one looking out, both at peace. "I wanted to show you something," Noah said softly. "This is what we built. Not just the cafe, the space between what we lost and what we found." Her voice caught. "It's beautiful," he looked at her. "So's the life that made it." The crowd gathered around to see, clapping softly. Someone poured champagne. Someone started the next song. The sound of laughter filled the old wooden rafters, rising like smoke, filling every empty corner that once echoed with silence. Lena leaned close to Noah. "You didn't have to come back." He smiled. "I didn't come back. I stayed gone long enough to realize this is where I belong." She tilted her head. "And what now?" "Now," he said, taking her hand, "we stop counting trains." Later, when the guests were gone and the lanterns had dimmed, they sat on the platform together. The rain had stopped, leaving everything silver and still. The last train of the night waited on the tracks, engine humming softly, lights glowing in the mist. The conductor leaned out. "You two coming aboard?" Lena looked at Noah, then back at the cafe. The lights inside flickered gently, the sign swaying in the wind. She smiled. "Not tonight." The conductor nodded and tipped his hat. Some trains aren't meant to be taken. The doors closed. The whistle sounded once, low and steady, and as the train rolled away, its light fading into the distance, the two of them stood there hand in hand, watching the rails gleam under the moon. The air warm, the cafe alive behind them. Inside, the clock struck midnight. The world didn't end. It just breathed softly between trains.